She vanished without a trace on Christmas Eve, 8 months pregnant. No forced entry, no struggle, just gone. And the man who claimed to love her was already lying. Asto, California, December 24, 2002. Laci Peterson, 27 years old and nearly 8 months pregnant, was last seen by her husband, Scott Peterson, just after breakfast. He said she was walking the dog, but by nightfall, no one had seen her, not neighbors, not friends, not even family. Scott told investigators he'd been fishing alone at the Berkeley Marina, 90 miles away. Strange timing, right? Who goes fishing on Christmas Eve morning? Search dogs, dive teams, helicopters combing waters, family weeping at press conferences, clips of crowds holding posters. Where is Laci? Within hours, the community sprang into action. Hundreds searched, flyers flooded the streets. But Scott? He was calm, too calm, even smiling on TV. Then Amber Frey came forward. She wasn't just a friend, she was Scott's secret girlfriend. He told her his wife was gone weeks before Laci disappeared. Audio clip. Actual recorded call. Scott: "This will be my first Christmas without her." Amber confused: "Wait, I thought she's still missing." April 2003. A body washes up on the San Francisco Bay shore. Then another. A fetus, umbilical cord still attached. Days later, Laci's mutilated torso. The bodies were discovered less than a mile from where Scott claimed to be fishing. Coincidence or chilling precision? Experts say the fetus appeared full term, suggesting Laci may have been kept alive longer than believed, or the body decomposed in an unusual way. That question has never been fully answered. Scott was arrested in April 2003, just days after the body surfaced. Bleached hair, $15,000 in cash, camping gear, his brother's ID. Where was he going? In 2004, Scott was convicted of first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for the unborn child O'Connor. He was sentenced to death. But some still ask, did he really do it? There were no fingerprints, no murder weapon, no eyewitness. Some claim the media painted Scott guilty before the trial even began. Others suspect a burglary gone wrong nearby that same morning. And in 2022, his bid for a new trial was denied. Yet the internet remains obsessed. Why? Maybe it's the suburban setting, the unborn baby, the betrayal. Or maybe it's the way Scott smiled while everyone else was screaming for answers. There's one question people still ask, and that might be what cracks this case wide open. He was calm under pressure, polished, charming, but behind that smile was a man living a double life. And to this day, there are questions he has never answered. Scott Peterson wasn't just hiding a mistress. He was living a fantasy life while his wife was missing. He told Amber he'd lost his wife, but that lie was told 2 weeks before Laci vanished. Audio clip. Scott: "This will be a difficult holiday. First time without her." Investigators believe this was no spur-of-the-moment crime. It was calculated, controlled, cold. He bought tools weeks earlier. He mapped out the bay, and yet no physical evidence was ever recovered from the house, the truck, or the boat. Scott claimed he went fishing, but the boat, it was barely seaworthy. Small. No sonar. No safety gear. Experts say it's possible if he used homemade anchors. 4 were found missing from his garage. Investigators believe Laci was weighted down, dismembered, and dropped into the bay piece by piece. Only the baby's body and Laci's torso were found. The rest, never recovered. Here's what most people don't know. Not all evidence made it into the courtroom. Witnesses reported seeing Laci alive after the time prosecutors said she was killed. A neighbor saw the Petersons' dog walking the street with its leash still on at 10:18 a.m. Yet Scott claimed Laci took the dog for a walk around 9:30. One witness claimed to see Laci in a car with 2 men. Another said she saw a struggling pregnant woman in a van parked nearby. These leads were never fully followed up. After his conviction, Scott showed no visible reaction, no breakdown, no rage, just nothing. Friends said he was always distant, calculated, but now, he claims he's innocent. He's maintained the same story for over 2 decades. but he's never answered this. There were things in Scott's possession that investigators never found. No tarp, no gloves, no bloodstains. Did he clean them or hide them before calling 911? Some believe the real answers lie with whoever helped him, if anyone did. There were phone calls he deleted, voicemails erased, credit card purchases that don't fully add up. And then there's what Amber Frey said. He never slipped. Not once. Almost like he rehearsed it all. It's been over 20 years, but the questions haven't stopped. And more importantly, why? They searched his house, his truck, his boat. They dredged the bay for months, but there's one place investigators never checked. A location tied to a quiet moment in the timeline, one that no one talked about until now. December 24, 2002. Scott claims he left for Berkeley Marina around 9:30 a.m., but cell tower pings show a signal delay. There's a missing window from 9:48 to 10:33. No surveillance, no verified stops. Just 45 minutes of darkness in a timeline that was already fragile. That stretch of land, privately owned, never searched, borders the Tuolumne River. If you wanted to hide something fast, it's where you go. Photos of the orchard in 2002. Overhead satellite imagery. Zoom into dense brush, tractor pads, irrigation tanks. Local reports suggest a neighbor spotted a dusty green truck, like Scott's driving past the locked orchard gate that same morning. Law enforcement didn't follow up. Why? It was private property, and they had already decided. He dumped her in the bay. That orchard was less than 20 minutes from the Peterson home. It was quiet, secluded, and it could have been used to temporarily stage a body. Here's the detail that haunts the timeline. At exactly 10:18 a.m., a neighbor returns home and sees Mackenzie wandering outside alone, leash still attached. If Scott had already left at 9:30 like he claimed, who let the dog out almost an hour later? Unless he didn't leave when he said he did, or someone else was there. In 2021, a group of amateur investigators pinpointed a possible dig site along the Tuolumne near that orchard. Cadaver dogs, reportedly alerted, on a spot twice. But when police were notified, nothing happened. Was it too late? Had rain and time already erased what was buried there? Or was someone protecting what really happened? There's been one theory that no one wants to touch. Did someone help Scott cover it up? A family member? A friend? A stranger? A 36-second call. Untraceable. Mid-morning. Could that have been the signal to move her body? They searched the water, but not the soil. They followed the lies, but ignored the silences. And if someone finally digs in the right place, what might they still find? 12 jurors found Scott Peterson guilty of murdering his wife and unborn son. But behind the courtroom doors, there were pieces of evidence they never saw, witnesses they never heard, and questions the court refused to answer. The prosecution built a timeline. Scott killed Laci the morning of December 24th, then drove her body to the San Francisco Bay. But what if that timeline was off? At least 8 people reported seeing a pregnant woman matching Laci's description walking her dog after Scott left for the marina. One even described her in vivid detail: a white top, black leggings, bulging belly, walking a golden retriever. But the judge ruled these testimonies as unreliable. The jury never heard them. On the same morning Laci vanished, a house just across the street was burgled. 2 men were later arrested for the break-in, but the timeline? It didn't add up. What if Laci saw the burglars and they silenced her? One of the suspects claimed they broke in on the 26th after she disappeared. But a neighbor swears it happened on the 24th, around the same time Laci vanished. This angle was barely pursued. The jury never told about the neighbor's statement. Scott made a series of calls that morning. One was to Laci's voicemail. He left a message casual, almost rehearsed, but there were also deleted calls. 2 outgoing calls from his phone were never explained, both under 1 minute, one to a blocked number, another with no record of destination. Experts weren't allowed to testify about potential number spoofing or phone manipulation. The jury never learned about the missing data. Scott's emotionless demeanor became a cornerstone of his guilt, but forensic psychologists weren't called to explain his affect. No clinical evaluation was presented. One retired profiler later said, "He doesn't react the way we expect, but that's not proof of murder. That's proof of control." The jury saw a villain, but they never heard a clinical analysis. In 2020, Scott Peterson's legal team discovered a bombshell. One juror had concealed her past. She had been the victim of domestic abuse and had filed a restraining order while pregnant. This was the exact situation she was meant to evaluate objectively. She didn't disclose it. She claimed it wasn't relevant. The court overturned Scott's death sentence, but let the conviction stand. What if they had heard about the sightings, the burglary, the deleted calls, the tainted juror? Would the verdict have changed? He was sentenced to die by lethal injection. But now, he's serving life with a new legal team, a growing online movement, and a family who insists Scott Peterson didn't kill anyone. 2 decades behind bars, Scott Peterson now spends 23 hours a day in a 6x9 cell. Books, legal papers, no visitors except his legal team and a few family members. Yes, after the California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence in 2020 due to juror misconduct, he was removed from death row. Now, he's housed in general population, awaiting one thing, another chance. There's a new generation asking hard questions. Thousands now believe Scott Peterson may be innocent. Some call it justice. Others call it revisionist history. Supporters argue the case was built on media pressure and moral outrage, not physical evidence. No blood, no DNA, no murder weapon, only circumstantial threads. Courtroom sketches from 2021 to 2022. Defense attorneys arguing for a retrial. News anchors debating new evidence or just old noise. The judge ruled, no, the conviction would stand. But the ruling left a door open. Scott's team is now appealing to federal court. Laci Peterson's family has never doubted Scott's guilt. To them, he's a narcissist who lied, cheated, and killed to start over. They say he deserves to rot. But Scott's family insists he's a scapegoat. They cite hidden evidence, altered reports, and media manipulation. One relative says, if he didn't look guilty, they wouldn't have looked so hard. Scott Peterson is 52 years old. He will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars unless the federal courts rule in his favor. He says he still prays for Laci every day, but he's never admitted guilt. Not once. Yes, in every letter, every statement, every hearing. He maintains the same story. That he left to fish. That he came home and she was gone. 20 years. 1 trial. 2 bodies. 0 confessions. And still no one truly knows what happened to Laci Peterson that morning. Was justice served? Or was the wrong man buried alive? Thank you for following this series. Share your theory in the comments. Subscribe, share, and like for future case deep dives. This story might be closed, but the questions are still wide open.